Hey everybody, Chris Lagarde here with the Chris and Kayla Real Estate Team, where we are committed to dramatically impacting lives through real estate. Also want to remind you we are hiring, so if you ever wanted to be in real estate, or maybe you're an operations person and want to make a huge difference and dramatically impact lives, give us a call. Call me, let us know. We'd love to talk to you about things. If you're an existing agent, don't want to do the transaction management stuff, love sales, call me. We are actively hiring for experienced real estate people. So with that said, here's what we're going to talk about today. I got some very important insight from a class I went to a few weeks ago, and I want to share some of that knowledge with you. So market cycles. It's kind of the main crux of what we're going to talk about. So I've got a whiteboard behind me. I want to talk about market cycles, especially as it relates to real estate. It's very important to know, and I'll explain why in a second. So here on the whiteboard, we've got the real estate cycle, essentially, right? You know, it's going up and down. All markets have some sort of cycle, right? You know, whether it's stock market, commercial real estate, residential real estate, tech, you know, whatever it is, things have cycles in it. And so it's important to understand a few things about the cycle. First of all, it does repeat, right? And how do people measure, you know, the timing of the market, right? How do they measure, you know, the market overall? And the answer to that is from peak to peak. So from the one peak to another peak, that's how they measure it. Does anybody happen to know how long the average real estate cycle has been? The answer is somewhere around 7 to 10 years. All right. So the next question you got to ask yourself is, if you're trying to figure out some things about market and where we're at in this cycle, when was the last peak? Arguably, in the national market, it was somewhere around 2005 to 2007, depending on where you were. Where are we now? 2017. So we are 10 years into a arguably 7 or so year cycle. So we're, you know, maybe as much as 12 years into it. And so we're overdue for, you know, for this to happen, especially this area. Now I'm going to talk about that in a second, where we're at locally in the Chester County area, but you know, we're overdue for a little bit of a softening. A couple things about the real estate cycle. So one thing I learned, which I think is important, is, you know, wealthy or successful people don't ask, how is the real estate market, right? The question of how is the real estate market doesn't tell you a whole lot. The right question to ask is, where are we in this cycle? Where are we in that cycle? Because if you know where you're at, whether it's 1, 2, 3, or 4, and I'll tell you what those are in just a second, no matter where you're at, you know how to act. And depending on what cycle, part of the cycle you're in, you're going to act differently. So obviously the first part is the upswing, right? Number 1 is upswing of the market. Number 2 is the peak, so I think where we're at right now, actually. Number 3 is the downturn, and number 4, all the way over here, is the bottom, you know, the pit. So depending on where you're at, if you believe we're in number 1 in the upswing, you're going to act differently than if we're in number 3 as a downswing. And so it's interesting that when you know where the market is, when is no longer needed when you act as if. And so if you're acting as if we're in the second part of the cycle and we're in 1, you know, it doesn't matter really where we are. It really kind of negates everything because you're able to kind of offset. And let me explain that for a second. So when we're in the upswing, you know, where do people think we are? You know, they probably think we're somewhere down here, right? You know, once we're in the middle of this, you're not going to know it until you're probably up here. In fact, a lot of folks recently that I've talked to kind of feel we are there, right? And most people, you know, you're lagging behind by a cycle to some degree, especially builders, by the way. Builders almost always are a number behind. So when we're in 1, you know, they're in 4. When we're in 2, they're in 1. If we're in 3, they're in 2. So, you know, new construction tends to lag behind by, you know, a step. And so one of the things I learned, I'm going to try to make as much sense of this as I can. If we know we're in the first part of the cycle, you're going to act as if you're in the next cycle. And for real estate agents, all right, and really for a lot of businesses, I'll say, let me put it this way. If we believe that we're in 2, we're going to act like we're in 3. And what that's going to do is it's going to say, okay, well, you know, if you're in the falling market and things are dropping, you're going to tighten the ship. You're going to hold every account, every expense accountable. You're going to make sure that every dollar you spend, you're going to get a return, because it's really important, right? Whereas if we're in cycle 2, what do most businesses do in cycle 2? They spend like crazy. Holy cow, it's wonderful. I've talked to a lot of agents recently, and how's your business been this year? And it's like, holy cow, it's been amazing. Of course it's been amazing. We're at this part of the market. So, everybody's buying all these lead sources and spending tons of money on different gimmicks and things, when in reality, we may be starting to go here. And there is some evidence locally that we have definitely hit this point. And so it's good to know exactly where we're at. I do believe, because of days on market are increasing slightly. Have a few notes here. Days on market are up slightly. We're in the 3rd month of the sold listings, number of listings sold being below last year since the beginning of the year. Now, that in and of itself doesn't mean we're over that hump, but it is a sign I'm going to continue to watch. And so, knowing where we're at in the market for our clients and buyers and sellers, what does that mean to you? It means to be wise with your money, right? So if you're here and you need to sell and buy another house, well, prices are going up. They haven't reached a peak yet. The price of the home you're selling has gone up, but also the price of the home you're going to buy is going up. That's when I bought my home 4 years ago, and everybody's bought their home for the last couple of years. That's where we've been, right? So it kind of, price of your home that you're selling goes up, price of your home you're buying goes up. If you're here, the price that your home, the home that you're selling is going down, the price of the home that you're buying is going down. And so you need to be very wise with your money. What matters more than anything is like, okay, well, if you bought here and you're here, which we've seen over the last, I don't know, since 2008, give or take, that's going to make a difference. That's where short sales and things happen. And can you predict that? Not really, not as a buyer or seller. You can't really play that game. If you need to buy a home, let's say we are here and you're a first-time buyer and you're like, shoot, I don't want to buy at the height of the market. What are you going to do? Wait 5 or 6 years until we get to here, and you're not even sure of when we're going to get to that point. So what matters more than anything is being wise with your money. Don't buy more than you can handle. I think a great ratio to look at is how much money do you bring in per month, and only use 25% of that on your mortgage. Now, I'm not a financial advisor, all right? Time out. I'm not a financial advisor. I am not giving financial advice. This is the way I live my life, and so you should absolutely talk to a financial advisor about that. But conventional wisdom, such as someone like Dave Ramsey or someone like that, will tell you 25% or less on your mortgage payment is a very good idea. That way, if personal story, I bought the home that the first home I bought in the height. It was 2004. I bought it in Coatesville City. The market tanked in 2008. We thought we were going to be in that house 4 or 5 years. 4 or 5 years rolls around, and our house is worth almost half of what it was when we bought it. And we knew we weren't going anywhere. I didn't have a need to go anywhere at the time, but come 2012, we're about to have our 3rd kid, and we're busting at the seams in this small townhouse. We're now in this market, and I'm like, you know what? I don't want that to happen to me again. Luckily, I was blessed enough I didn't have to sell that home. I kept that as a rental, and I was like, our mortgage payment is going to be 25% or less of the average of what we make. Now, at the time, and still I'm commissioned, so my income fluctuates, but there's an average, right, of what I made. And most W-2 employees, you know what you're going to make. So 25% or less, that, as much as it can, negates where you're at in this. It doesn't alleviate everything. So from a buying and selling standpoint, I don't know that it really matters a ton where you're at, because you can't, it's hard to play that game. If you got to move, you got to buy a house, it's the right time, you're making the money, be wise with your money and apply financial wisdom to it. Now, where it does matter more than anything else is if you're investing. And that's kind of why I wanted to share all this, because one of our passions is to help those that want to get into real estate investing. Traditionally and historically, it's one of the best places to build wealth. I have a few properties myself, and it's not as hard as people think, as long as there's some rules and things you follow, which if you're interested, I'd love to talk to you. Our team would love to talk to you. We can certainly help you with that. However, this cycle, you really want to know where you're at if you're investing in real estate. And so, if we believe we're here, you better be very careful how you buy your property if we're here. The best time, obviously, is to buy here, but if if you know where you're at, you can time things and what your strategies are. If, as a real estate investor, you're still going to buy homes if you see good enough deals. And if you're buying and holding and renting them out for 10, 15 plus years for net worth into the future, it's not going to matter as much. But if you're buying and flipping, fixing and flipping, that is going to matter quite a bit. You need to understand, where you're at. Like if you're doing that here, it's going to be hard to do because we're headed down and the home's going to be worth less than what today than it will be in 3 months. We are not here yet, luckily, but so that's how it impacts investing. So with that said, you want to always act from a business standpoint and investing standpoint, act like you're in the next cycle. So if we're in the first cycle, you want to be, just making hay while the sun shines. If we're here, which I believe we are, and you want to be acting like we're in number 3, which is cutting expenses, being very wise with your money, holding every dollar accountable. If we're in 3, you're going to act like it's 4 and just continue to hold steady. And actually the fun part is if we're in number 4, we're at the bottom, and we're about to go to the number 1 part of the cycle, you actually start spending the money you've saved here, because what's really cheap from a business standpoint? Marketing. You can get a lot of really good talent at that point. So you really start to build up momentum so that when you hit this, man, you're off and running. And I'll be honest, that's what I've seen Keller Williams International do over the last 10 years. If you look at their history, that's exactly what they've done. So I hope this has been helpful. It went a little bit longer than I really wanted to, but usually they do, right? Again, if you need anything real estate-wise, or if you're thinking about getting into real estate or are a real estate agent and want to connect with us about joining our team, I would love to talk to you. If this was helpful, please share it. I would love for you to do that and get some traction on the interwebs. Other than that, make it a great day, and I appreciate you spending some time with us watching this video. Thanks.